Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. So, getting ready for this, I was thinking, you know how everyone's always on about the next big food fad?
Yeah.
Like, what's the magic ingredient, the miracle superfood this week?
Right.
And, you sent over some really cool stuff about this. And what really got me is how it mixes, like, actual science with the Bible.
It is a cool mix, yeah.
So we're going to deep dive into superfoods. But, like, from all angles, what nutrition says and what the Bible says. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so we hear superfood all the time.
Everywhere you look, yeah.
But like for someone listening who's, I don't know, maybe in a lab or studying theology or whatever, what do nutritionists actually mean by superfood?
Well, you're right. It's used a lot. For us in nutrition, though, superfood isn't like an official category. It's
Wow.
more a way to describe foods that are just packed with good stuff, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all those things that are good for you.
So maybe not capes and superpowers, but powerful in their own way.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The stuff you sent links this whole superfood thing back to the Bible, like Genesis 1.29, where God gives people all these plants and fruit trees to eat.
Right.
It's like the original superfood list.
It is pretty amazing, yeah. Like, this old text is all about those natural, whole foods.
Which is totally what nutritionists say now, too.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of cultures have always valued these types of foods, and now we're realizing how important they are for staying healthy and avoiding all those chronic diseases.
So it's not just about the latest fancy berry or seed. It's about going back to basics, the foods that have always kept people going.
I think so, yeah.
Now, the stuff you sent also talks about those laws from Yahweh about food, like in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, where it talks about clean and unclean foods.
Yeah.
What's the connection there to superfoods as we understand them now?
That's where it gets really interesting, right? If you look closely at those laws, a lot of the clean foods are like the fruits, veggies, grains, things we consider superfoods today.
So it's almost like thousands of years ago, Yahweh was giving us a guide to being super healthy.
You could definitely see it that way, yeah.
But let's be real, the stuff you sent also points out how different that is from what people actually eat today.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've all seen those memes comparing a healthy plate to what we actually eat. I know I have.
Totally. And it is a big deal. In
Yeah.
our world now, processed food is everywhere, and it's a big reason why we have so many health problems like obesity and diabetes.
It really makes you think. We've come a long way from that ancient wisdom about food.
We have.
So how do we get back on track? The material you sent gives some examples of specific superfoods that are good for you. A and D have roots in the Bible.
Uh-huh.
One that stood out to me was the sweet potato. They're delicious. I mean, who doesn't love sweet potato fries?
Right.
But they're also packed with good stuff.
For sure. Sweet potatoes have tons of fiber, vitamins A and C, and those antioxidants that protect your cells. And the cool thing is they have a biblical connection too. Psalm 104.14 talks about God providing food out of the earth, which could totally be talking about root vegetables like sweet potatoes.
It's pretty wild how those old texts can still be relevant today.
It is.
Personally, when I started eating more whole foods, like sweet potatoes, it made a huge difference in how I felt. Like way more energy and just better overall.
That's awesome. It really shows how powerful it is to connect our diets back to these old, timeless principles. It's not about strict rules. It's about tapping into that ancient wisdom and making it work for us now.
Totally. And speaking of ancient wisdom becoming popular again, can we talk about everyone being obsessed with things like matcha, spirulina, and those golden turmeric lattes?
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere now. Even my local coffee shop has a turmeric latte.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's like our ancestors are watching us pay a fortune for the stuff they eat every day.
It's funny how food trends work like that. What's old is new again.
But it does make you think there's something to these ancient superfoods. It's more than just a fad.
Definitely. It shows that food trends come and go, but these old ways of eating have stuck around for a reason. It's about looking past the hype and seeing the real value these foods have.
So it's not about chasing the latest trend. It's about taking a holistic approach to what we eat, using both ancient wisdom and modern science. And that reminds me of a verse,
Oh, which one?
Proverbs 26.2. Like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse does not come to rest.
Interesting. How do you see that connecting to what we're talking about?
Well, to me, it's like we often look for those quick fixes like a magic pill or the perfect diet. But real health and well-being, they don't come from shortcuts. It takes effort, making good choices and aligning our lives with the wisdom that's been passed down for generations.
I like that. It's about taking responsibility for our own health and finding lasting solutions instead of relying on those quick fixes that don't really work in the long run.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey of nourishing ourselves in a way that respects both ancient wisdom and what we know now.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect way to lead into the next part of our deep dive, where we can explore some practical ways to make these principles a part of our daily lives.
Sounds great to me.
Hmm.
What do you say we take a quick break and come back to talk about that?
Sounds good. This whole thing about superfoods and ancient wisdom, it really makes you think about looking past all the fads and marketing.
Yeah, totally. It's easy to get caught up in all of that. You see those Instagram people with their fancy smoothies and think, that's it, that's the secret. But it's not about that, is it?
No, not really. It's about those deeper ideas, the stuff that's been around forever, about how to really nourish yourself.
So how do we actually use those ideas?
Mm.
We've talked about what superfoods are and those dietary laws, but how do we make that ancient wisdom work for us today?
I think it starts with just being aware, like really paying attention to what we're taking in, both physically and mentally, and then making choices that fit with those ideas.
So it's not about like denying yourself or following a bunch of rules. It's more about making smart decisions that are good for your body and soul.
Exactly. It's finding that balance between enjoying all the amazing food Yahweh gave us and being smart about how our choices affect us.
That makes sense. But let's get practical. What are some things our listeners can do to make this part of their daily lives?
Well, one simple thing is to start swapping out those processed foods for more natural, whole options. Think fruits, veggies, whole grains, good protein sources, the kind of stuff people have been eating for ages.
Yeah, like trading that sugary cereal for oatmeal with berries and nuts,
Hmm.
or ditching the snack bars for some almonds and an apple.
Exactly. Little changes like that can make a huge difference over time. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about making progress.
And what I like about this is it's not about feeling bad about what you eat. It's about rediscovering how great real food tastes and how good it makes you feel.
I totally agree. And speaking of feeling good, don't be afraid to have fun in the kitchen. Try new recipes, mix up different flavors, and rediscover those old ways of cooking that are often hidden in those ancient texts.
It's like going on a food adventure guided by ancient wisdom. And it's not just about individual choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this got me thinking about the bigger picture, how food connects us to our families, communities, and even spirituality.
You've hit on something really important there. Food is more than just fuel, it's a way to connect with others. Sharing meals with people you love, passing down recipes, supporting local farms, it's all about being connected.
It's like creating a whole culture of nourishing ourselves and each other.
Exactly. And that brings us to something we haven't talked about much, fasting.
Oh, yeah. The Bible talks about fasting a lot.
Yeah.
But how does that fit with all this superfood stuff? They seem kind of opposite.
It's not about seeing them as opposites, but more like how they can work together. Fasting, when done right and safely, can be really powerful for resetting how we think about food and making us appreciate it even more.
So it's not about depriving yourself, but about creating space to think and be grateful.
That's a great way to put it. Fasting can help us break bad habits, reduce cravings, and be more in tune with our bodies. It lets us really savor the simple act of eating and how it nourishes us.
And isn't that what this whole deep dive is about?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciating the gift of food, whether it's through those amazing superfoods or the practice of fasting. It's about making choices that line up with what people have known for generations and honoring that connection between food, faith, and well-being.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And this makes me think of a verse that really speaks to this.
Which one?
Ecclesiastes 3:13. That everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil, this is the gift of God.
That's powerful. It reminds us that food, in every way, is a gift. And it's not just about eating, but about finding joy and fulfillment in the whole process, growing it, cooking it, sharing it.
Absolutely. It's about seeing the sacredness in this everyday thing and approaching it with intention, gratitude, and a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Wow, this conversation has gone in some interesting directions. We started with superfoods for the body, and now we're talking about the soul. It's amazing how connected everything is.
It really is. And I think the big lesson here is that true nourishment is about every part of us, body, mind, and spirit. It's about making choices that support all of that and help us live lives that are full of energy and meaning.
I like that. So we've talked a lot about the foods that nourish us, but what about the things we take in that don't?
That's an interesting point. I guess we need to be just as careful about what we're feeding our minds and souls as we are about what we're putting in our bodies.
Yeah, it's about having a healthy diet in all areas of our lives. The information we consume, the relationships we have, the thoughts we let ourselves dwell on.
You got it. It's not just about superfoods, but about super thoughts, super relationships, super experiences, anything that makes us feel good and helps us live a better life.
I love that. And just like with our food, we need to be picky about what we let into our minds and hearts.
Exactly. So how do we figure out what truly nourishes our minds and souls? What are those superfoods of the spirit, so to speak?
That's a great question.
Mm.
And it's one that I think we should explore more in the last part of our deep dive.
I'm in. I'm already feeling more aware of the choices I'm making, not just with food, but in all parts of my life.
Me too. And it's important to remember it's a journey, not a race. We're all always learning and growing, and every step we take toward nourishing ourselves more is a win.
Well said. I think we should pick this up after a quick break and dive into those superfoods of the spirit. We can share some practical tips for how to live a truly nourishing life. What do you think?
Sounds great. Can't wait to get into it. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been through a lot talking about superfoods, the science, the Bible, all of it, but now I'm pumped for this last part.
Me too. We've talked about feeding our bodies right, but now it's about those superfoods for the soul, the stuff that feeds our minds and spirits.
Exactly. It's like we've stocked our inner pantry with all the best ingredients. Now it's time to cook up a feast for the soul. Where do we even start?
Well, just like with what we eat, it starts with paying attention to what we're taking in. What are we feeding our minds? What kind of information are we absorbing? What content are we surrounding ourselves with?
It's so easy to get sucked into that constant stream of news, social media, and entertainment. It's like we're always snacking on information, but are we actually getting any real nourishment?
That's the big question to ask. Just like choosing foods that are good for our bodies, we need to be careful about what we let shape our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings.
So what are some of these superfoods for the soul? What are the things that lift us up, inspire us, and connect us to something bigger?
For me, one of the best things is spending time in nature. Being surrounded by all that beauty and power, it just calms your mind, gives you energy, and reminds you of your place in the world.
I'm totally with you. It's like a reset button for your soul. And it doesn't have to be some big wilderness trip. Even a walk in the park, listening to the birds, feeling the sun, it can be so powerful.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are good for the soul, building strong relationships is another essential ingredient. Being around people who lift you up, challenge you, and help you grow is so important for your well-being.
It's like they say, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If we want healthy souls, we need to be careful about who we spend our time with.
Exactly. And it's not just about how many people, it's about the quality of those connections. Focus on relationships that bring joy, laughter, and a sense of belonging. Take care of the relationships that feed your soul and help you become your best self.
This is making me think about how everything's connected. We've been talking about superfoods for the body and soul. But how do those two things affect each other? How does nourishing our physical bodies affect our spiritual well-being?
That's a great question, and it's something that ancient traditions have understood for a long time. Many spiritual practices stress how important it is to care for the body as a temple of the spirit.
Like those biblical dietary laws we talked about. They weren't just about physical health, but also about spiritual purity and aligning yourself with Yahweh's will.
Exactly. And even now, people are becoming more aware of the mind-body connection. When we take care of our bodies with good food, we create a foundation for clear thinking, emotional balance, and spiritual growth.
It's like that verse from 1 Corinthians 6.1920. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies.
That verse really gets to the heart of how connected everything is. Our bodies aren't separate from our spirits, they're intertwined. When we honor one, we honor the other.
So it's not just what we eat, but how we eat. Are we eating mindfully, with gratitude, and in a way that respects both our bodies and spirits?
Exactly. Mindful eating is another one of those superfoods for the soul. It's about slowing down, enjoying each bite, and appreciating the nourishment we're getting. It's about being present in the moment and feeling grateful for what we have.
It's so easy to just rush through meals, distracted by our phones or to-do lists. But when we take the time to eat mindfully, it becomes a kind of meditation, a way to connect with ourselves, our food, and even the divine.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You know, all of this makes me think of another superfood for the soul that often gets overlooked: silence.
Silence. Really, our world is so loud and busy. How can silence be a superfood?
That's exactly why it's so important. In those quiet moments, we can hear our own inner voice. We can connect with that deeper part of ourselves that gets drowned out by all the noise of the world.
It's like giving our soul space to breathe.
Exactly. Whether it's through meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, or just finding a few minutes of quiet each day, making time for silence is so powerful for our spirits.
It's about turning down the volume on the outside world so we can hear our own inner wisdom.
You got it. And it brings us back to that verse from Isaiah. Why spend money on what is not bread and your labor on what does not satisfy?
Right. It reminds us to be careful about what we consume, both physically and mentally, to invest our time and energy in the things that truly nourish us, things that align with our values, and things that help us become our most authentic selves.
It's about finding satisfaction not in those fleeting pleasures or what other people think, but in that deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment that comes from living a life that's true to who we are.
Wow, what a journey this has been. We started with superfoods for the body and ended up exploring superfoods for the soul. It's amazing how connected it all is.
It really is. And I think the biggest takeaway is that true nourishment involves every part of us, body, mind, and spirit. It's about making choices that support our overall well-being and help us live lives that are full of energy and meaning.
I couldn't agree more. And with that, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been an amazing exploration, and a huge thank you to all of you amazing listeners for joining us on this journey.
Yes, thank you for your curiosity, your willingness to explore these big questions, and your dedication to nourishing yourselves in every way.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The journey of nourishment never really ends, and we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, making conscious choices, and discovering what truly feeds your body, mind, and spirit.
Until next time, may you find nourishment in all that you do.